Welcome to insane HOA madness. The vendor showed up fast because she kept them paid. You are not going to pretend this did not happen. Catherine screamed that touching the boot would be tampering and she would call the police while the tow truck rolled in. I stood beside my car, hands raised, staring at the yellow wheel clamp locked onto my front tire like a steel trap. The tow truck driver climbed out, clipboard in hand, moving slow like he had done this 100 times. Catherine pointed at me, then at the clamp, then at the driver, voice rising with every gesture. I work as a property appraiser in Charleston, South Carolina. I know what liens do to value. I know what predatory towing does to neighborhoods. And I know when someone is running a shakedown. This is Kingsbridge Estates Association. Gated community, manicured lawns, rules for everything. I moved here 6 months ago because the commute was good and the price was right. I did not read the fine print on guest parking. Big mistake. Catherine Clark is the election committee chair. She manipulates ballots and proxies like it is a side hustle. She also has a clipboard wrapped in a clear plastic sleeve like it makes her official. She carries it everywhere. Right now, she was holding it over her head like a referee calling a foul. The clamp had appeared while I was inside making coffee. No warning, no knock, just a cold steel bite on my front wheel and Catherine standing in my driveway with a handheld scanner pointed at my car like she was logging evidence for a felony. I am calling management, and I am going to be dramatic about it, she said, phone already to her ear. I asked her what rule I violated. She flipped a page on her clipboard, snapped the plastic sleeve, and read off a violation code. Guest vehicle parked overnight without a visible guest pass. Unauthorized occupancy of assigned space. Repeat offense. I told her my friend left at midnight. She shook her head. Scanner says the plate was logged at 6 a.m. That means overnight. That means tow or clamp. Your choice. The tow truck driver stepped closer. He was wearing a company polo with a logo I did not recognize. He said he needed me to move away from the vehicle so they could proceed with the lift. I asked him who called the tow. He glanced at Catherine, then back at his clipboard. He said the HOA requested the service. I asked Catherine for the written rule. She flipped another page. The rule was buried in an appendix about parking decals and overnight guests. No guest vehicle may remain on property past 2 a.m. without a pre-registered guest pass displayed on the dashboard. Passes must be requested 48 hours in advance. Failure to comply results in immediate tow or immobilization. I told her my friend did not stay overnight. She smiled. Scanner does not lie. The plate was here at 6 a.m. That is overnight in my book. The tow driver hooked a chain to the undercarriage. I heard the ratchet click. Catherine stepped closer, her plastic sleeve clipboard catching the light. She said if I touched the clamp or interfered with the tow, she would file a police report for obstruction and tampering. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Catherine immediately turned her back, clipboard held up like a shield. The driver paused, looked at me, then at Catherine. He said he needed authorization in writing if I was disputing the tow. Catherine waved the clipboard. She said the authorization was on file with the HOA office and the tow company. She said I could request a copy after I paid the release fee. I asked how much. She said $250 for the clamp removal, $400 if they towed it to the yard, plus a $50 re-entry fine for violating the guest parking policy, plus a $100 administrative processing fee for the violation notice. Total of $400 if I acted now, $800 if I waited. The wind picked up. A loose page from her clipboard fluttered and skittered across the driveway. She chased it, grabbed it, shoved it back under the plastic. I saw the edge of a printed form with a company logo. No readable text, but it looked like a contract. I told her I was not paying a dime until I saw proof that the tow was legitimate. She laughed. She said the proof was in the scanner log and the HOA enforcement database. She said I should have read the rules before I moved in, sweetheart. That line landed like a slap. I felt my jaw tighten. I kept the phone steady. The driver finished hooking the chain. He said he could lift it now or wait for me to pay the clamp fee. I asked him if he had a copy of the authorization. He pointed at Catherine. He said she was the point of contact. Catherine held up her clipboard again. She said the authorization was filed with the tow company in the HOA management office. She said I could request a copy through the records department, but there was a $15 copy fee per page and a 30-day processing window. I asked if she was serious. She smiled. She said the rules are the rules. I told the driver I was not authorizing the tow. He shrugged. He said if the HOA authorized it, he did not need my signature. I asked him to show me the work order. He pulled a folded page from his pocket. It had the Kingsbridge Estates Association name at the top and a violation code. The signature line was filled in with Catherine's name. I took a photo of the work order. Catherine stepped in front of the camera. She said I was harassing the vendor and interfering with HOA enforcement. She pulled out her phone and said she was calling the police. I asked her what law I was breaking. She did not answer. She just held the phone up and started dialing. The driver looked uncomfortable. He said he was going to radio his supervisor. Catherine told him not to bother. She said the work order was valid and he should proceed. He walked back to the truck and picked up the radio. I stood there with my phone still recording. Catherine paced in front of my car, clipboard tucked under one arm, phone pressed to her ear. She was talking fast, words clipping together. I caught fragments. Tampering, obstruction, homeowner refusing to comply. A neighbor walked by with a dog. He slowed down, phone out, filming from a safe distance. Catherine noticed and turned her back. The dog walker kept filming. The tow driver came back. He said his supervisor told him to wait for police if there was a dispute. Catherine's face went red. She said there was no dispute. She said the HOA authorized the tow and that was the end of it. The driver said he was not moving the truck until police cleared it. Catherine started yelling. She said he was breaching the contract. She said the HOA would file a complaint with the towing company. She said he was costing her money. I asked her whose money. She did not answer. The scanner in her hand beeped. She looked down, tapped the screen, then looked back at me. She said another vehicle in the neighborhood was flagged for a guest pass violation and she had to go. She told the driver to stay put and wait for police. Then she walked off, clipboard under one arm, scanner in the other hand, moving fast toward the gatehouse. I called my friend who was a property manager. Her name is Angela. She knows HOA procedure and records requests inside out. I told her what happened. She said to document everything, get the police report number, and request a full copy of the parking enforcement policy and the tow vendor contract under the HOA records statute. She said if Catherine had a cozy relationship with the tow company, the call logs would show it. She said selective enforcement was a lawsuit waiting to happen. She said to look for other homeowners who got hit with the same violation and compare the enforcement pattern. I asked her how long that would take. She said it depended on how fast the HOA responded to the records request. South Carolina law gives them 10 business days, but HOAs drag their feet. She said to expect delays, fees, and redactions. The tow driver leaned against his truck, scrolling his phone. I asked him how many calls he got from Kingsbridge Estates in a week. He said he could not share that. I asked him if Catherine called him directly or if it went through the HOA office. He said it depended. A police cruiser pulled up 10 minutes later. The officer got out, asked what was going on. I showed him the clamp, the tow truck, the work order. He asked where the HOA rep was. I pointed toward the gatehouse. He walked over there. Catherine came back 5 minutes later with the officer. She was talking fast, gesturing at my car, at the clamp, at me. The officer held up a hand. He said he needed to see the violation notice and the authorization. Catherine pulled a page from her clipboard. It was a pre-printed form with checkboxes and a handwritten date. The officer looked at it, then looked at me. He asked if I disputed the violation. I said yes. I said my guest left before midnight and the scanner log was wrong. Catherine said the scanner does not make mistakes. The officer asked her if she personally witnessed my guest leaving. She said no. She said the scanner recorded the plate at 6 a.m., and that was proof enough. The officer asked if there was video. Catherine said the gatehouse cameras do not record overnight. The officer asked if there were any other witnesses. Catherine said she did not need witnesses. She said the scanner log was documentation. The officer looked at me. He asked if I had proof my guest left early. I said I had a text message timestamp showing my friend said goodnight at 11:45. I showed him my phone. He nodded. He said the clamp was a civil matter between me and the HOA. He said if I believed the enforcement was improper, I needed to file a dispute with the HOA board and request a hearing. Catherine interrupted. She said the appeal window closes today. She said if I did not file by 5 p.m., the violation would stand and the fees would double. If you are enjoying this HOA nightmare, smash that like button and subscribe for more wild stories. I asked the officer if he could document the incident. He said he would write a report number. He walked back to his cruiser and started writing. Catherine stood beside my car, arms crossed, clipboard pressed against her chest. I asked her why she was targeting me. She said she was not targeting anyone. She said she was enforcing the rules equally. I asked her if she scanned every guest vehicle in the neighborhood at 6 a.m. She said she scanned vehicles that were flagged for repeat violations. I asked her who flagged my vehicle. She said the system flagged it automatically. I asked her to show me the system. She said the scanner data was confidential and only accessible to enforcement officers. The officer came back with a slip of paper. He said the report number was on file and I could reference it in my HOA dispute. He told the tow driver he was free to leave or proceed as long as there was no breach of peace. The driver said he would remove the clamp if I paid the fee or if the HOA rescinded the authorization. Catherine said the HOA was not rescinding anything. The driver looked at me. I said I was not paying until I saw proof the violation was legitimate. The driver packed up his chain, climbed into the truck, and drove off. The clamp stayed on my tire. Catherine handed me a new violation notice. It was dated today. It said failure to remove unauthorized vehicle within 24 hours would result in towing to the impound yard and a lien filing on my property. She said the lien would attach to my deed and show up on title searches. She said it would kill my resale value. She smiled when she said it. Then she turned and walked toward the gatehouse, clipboard tucked under her arm, scanner swinging from a lanyard. I called Angela back. I told her about the appeal deadline and the lien threat. She said the lien threat was real. She said HOAs in South Carolina can file liens for unpaid fees and fines. She said if the lien stayed on record for more than 90 days, it would trigger title insurance issues and tank my refinance options. She said I needed to file the appeal today and request an emergency hearing. She said I also needed to file a records request for the parking enforcement policy, the tow vendor contract, the scanner logs, and any correspondence between Catherine and the tow company. I asked her how to prove selective enforcement. She said to walk the neighborhood and photograph every vehicle without a guest pass or a visible decal. She said to timestamp the photos and note the addresses. She said if other homeowners were violating the same rule without enforcement, that was evidence of bias. I spent the next 2 hours walking Kingsbridge Estates with my phone. I found 6 vehicles parked overnight in guest spots with no visible guest pass. I found 3 vehicles with expired decals. I found 1 vehicle blocking a fire lane. I photographed all of them with timestamps and GPS tags. I also found Angela at the clubhouse. She was waiting for me with a printed records request form. She said to file it in person and get a time-stamped receipt. She said to include a request for all enforcement actions taken in the past 12 months, sorted by violation type and homeowner address. We walked to the HOA management office. The receptionist took the form, stamped it, and handed me a receipt. She said the response would take up to 30 days and there would be a copy fee of 50 cents per page. I asked her how many pages. She said she did not know until they compiled the records. I filed the appeal next. The form asked for a description of the dispute and any supporting evidence. I attached the text message screenshot, the police report number, and a statement explaining that my guest left before midnight and the scanner log was incorrect. The receptionist took the appeal form and said the board would schedule a hearing within 10 business days. I asked if I could attend. She said yes. She said I would get a notice with the date and time. Catherine appeared in the lobby as I was leaving. She saw the receipt in my hand and her face went tight. She asked the receptionist what I filed. The receptionist said she could not share that information. Catherine said she was the enforcement chair and she had a right to know. The receptionist said the appeal was confidential until the hearing. Catherine's face went red. She said she would bring it up at the next board meeting. Then she turned and walked into the back office, clipboard still pressed against her chest. Angela and I walked back to my car. The clamp was still locked on the tire. She said the clamp company would have to remove it if the HOA rescinded the authorization or if I paid the fee. She said paying the fee did not waive my right to dispute the underlying violation. I asked her what happened if I just cut the clamp off. She said that would be destruction of property and the HOA would file a police report. She said it was not worth it. I acted like I was backing down because timing was the whole weapon. I needed the records first. I needed the hearing. I needed the board to see the pattern. 2 days later, I got a call from the tow company. The driver said Catherine authorized them to tow my car to the impound yard if the clamp was not removed by end of business. He said the fee would jump to $800 plus daily storage. I asked him if he had the authorization in writing. He said yes. I asked him to email it to me. He said he would have to check with his supervisor. I called Angela. She said to let them tow it. She said the tow would create a paper trail and force the HOA to document the authorization. She said once the car was in the yard, I could demand the tow receipt and the itemized fee breakdown. She said if the fees were inflated or the authorization was improper, I could sue the tow company and the HOA together. I asked her if that would cost more than just paying the clamp fee. She said yes, but she said it was the only way to stop Catherine from doing this to other homeowners. The tow truck came back at 4 p.m. The driver unhooked the clamp, hooked the wheel lift to my front axle, and hoisted the car onto the flatbed. Catherine stood in the street, clipboard in hand, watching like she was supervising a victory parade. The driver handed me a tow receipt with no readable text, just a barcode and a reference number. Catherine walked over to me. She said this could have been avoided if I had just followed the rules. She said the HOA was not targeting me. She said I brought this on myself. I asked her if she scanned every vehicle in the neighborhood or just mine. She said the scanner flagged repeat offenders. I asked her how many times my guest had parked here before. She flipped a page on her clipboard. She said twice in the past month. I asked her for the dates. She said the logs were confidential. I said I had already filed a records request. She said the records would be redacted to protect homeowner privacy. I asked her if she had a financial relationship with the tow company. Her face went tight. She said that was a baseless accusation. I said I was just asking a question. She turned and walked back to the gatehouse. The tow truck pulled away with my car. I watched it disappear around the corner, my mind already running through the next steps. The records request came back 6 days later, 53 pages, $26 in copy fees. The parking enforcement policy was included. The tow vendor contract was redacted. The scanner logs were marked confidential and not included. Angela and I went through the pages in her kitchen. The enforcement policy said guest vehicles must display a pre-registered guest pass or a temporary decal issued by the HOA office. Passes must be requested 48 hours in advance. Vehicles without passes are subject to citation, immobilization, or towing at the discretion of the enforcement officer. The policy also said enforcement actions would be applied equally to all homeowners. Angela circled that line with a red pen. The redacted contract had the tow company name blacked out. The fee schedule was included. $250 for a clamp, $400 for a tow to the yard, $50 per day storage. The signature line at the bottom was redacted, but the date was visible. The contract was signed 6 months ago, right around the time I moved in. Angela said the redactions were excessive. She said HOA vendor contracts were not confidential under South Carolina law. She said I could file a complaint with the state and request an unredacted copy. I asked her how long that would take. She said months, maybe a year. I did not have a year. The hearing was in 4 days. I decided to gather my own evidence. I walked the neighborhood again and photographed every parking violation I could find. I found 4 vehicles in guest spots with no visible pass. I found 2 vehicles with expired decals. I found 1 vehicle blocking a fire lane with no citation. I knocked on doors and asked homeowners if they had ever been cited for parking violations. 3 said yes, 2 said no. One said Catherine had threatened to tow her guest vehicle, but backed off after she complained to the board. I asked if she had documentation. She said she had an email. I asked if I could get a copy. She said yes. She forwarded it to me that night. The email was from Catherine. It said the homeowner's guest vehicle was parked in violation of the policy and would be towed if not moved within 2 hours. The homeowner replied asking for proof. Catherine replied saying the scanner logged the violation and the tow was authorized. The homeowner replied threatening to file a complaint with the board. Catherine replied saying the tow authorization was rescinded due to administrative error. Angela said that was the smoking gun. She said Catherine was using the tow threat as leverage and backing off when homeowners pushed back. She said that was selective enforcement. I asked her what I should do with it. She said to bring it to the hearing. She said to present it as part of a timeline showing Catherine's pattern of behavior. The hearing was scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m. in the clubhouse meeting room. I printed 20 copies of my evidence packet, 12 pages each. Timeline of enforcement actions, photos of unpunished violations, email thread, police report number, text message screenshot. Angela said to organize it so the facts were undeniable even to people who hate drama. She said to start with the timeline, then the photos, then the emails, then the police report. She said to end with a one-page summary asking the board to rescind the violation, refund the fees, and investigate Catherine's relationship with the tow vendor. I asked her if she would come with me. She said yes. She said she would sit in the back and take notes. Thursday came. I arrived at the clubhouse at 6:45. The meeting room was set up with a long table at the front and folding chairs in rows. 5 board members sat at the table. Catherine was not one of them, but she was sitting in the front row with her clipboard. The board president called the meeting to order. He said they had 3 appeals on the agenda. Mine was second. I sat in the 3rd row with Angela beside me. The first appeal was a landscaping violation. The homeowner argued that the mulch color was within spec. The board reviewed photos and voted to uphold the violation. 4-1. Then it was my turn. The president said my name and asked me to come forward. I walked to the front and handed each board member a copy of my evidence packet. Catherine leaned forward in her seat, eyes locked on the pages. The president flipped through the packet. He said I had 5 minutes to present my case. I started with the timeline. I said my guest arrived at 8 p.m. and left at 11:45 p.m. I showed the text message screenshot. I said the scanner log was incorrect. I moved to the photos. I said I found multiple vehicles parked in guest spots with no visible pass, expired decals, and fire lane violations. I said none of those vehicles were cited or towed. I said that was selective enforcement. Catherine stood up. She said I was making accusations without proof. The president told her to sit down. She sat, but her face was red. I moved to the email thread. I said Catherine threatened to tow another homeowner's guest vehicle and then rescinded the authorization when the homeowner complained. I said that proved Catherine was using the tow threat as leverage. One of the board members, a man in his 60s, raised his hand. He said the email did not prove a financial relationship with the tow company. I said I was not alleging fraud. I said I was alleging selective enforcement and asking the board to investigate the vendor relationship. Catherine stood up again. She said the tow vendor was selected through a competitive bid process. She said the contract was approved by the board. The president told her to sit down again. She did not sit. She said I was trying to smear her reputation because I did not want to pay my fines. I pulled out the final piece of my evidence, a package of photos proving multiple homeowners violate the same rule without enforcement. 24 images, time-stamped, GPS tagged. I presented it as a timeline so the facts were undeniable even to people who hate drama. I laid them out on the table in front of the board. Catherine's face went white. She tried to grab the photos. The president told her to step back. She stepped back, but her hands were shaking. The board president asked Catherine if she had scanned the other vehicles in the photos. She said no. He asked why not. She said the scanner only flagged repeat offenders. He asked how a vehicle became a repeat offender if it was never scanned the first time. Catherine did not answer. She just stood there, clipboard pressed against her chest, mouth open like she was searching for words that would not come. One of the board members, a woman in her 50s, said she had received complaints from other homeowners about inconsistent parking enforcement. She said 3 homeowners told her their guests were threatened with towing, while other homeowners had guests park for days with no citation. The president said the board would review the evidence and vote. He asked if Catherine had anything to add. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her handheld scanner slipped from her hand and skittered across the pavement. Someone in the audience laughed. Catherine bent down to pick it up, face red, hands fumbling. The board president said the hearing was concluded, and the board would issue a decision within 5 business days. I walked back to my seat. Angela squeezed my shoulder. Catherine stormed out of the room, clipboard tucked under her arm, scanner clutched in one hand. 3 days later, I got an email from the board. They rescinded the violation. They refunded the tow fees and the clamp fee. They issued a formal apology for the inconvenience, and they launched an investigation into the tow vendor contract and Catherine's enforcement practices. The email also said the HOA would publish a clear parking policy to all residents and retrain all enforcement officers on equal application of rules. 2 weeks later, the board sent another email. Catherine had resigned from the election committee. The tow vendor contract was terminated. The board hired a new parking management company with transparent pricing and a complaint process. The email also said the board reviewed all parking citations issued in the past 12 months. They found 15 violations that were inconsistently enforced. They rescinded all of them and refunded the fees. 1 month later, I got a call from an insurance company. They said they were reviewing the HOA's liability coverage and found an insurance risk warning that makes the board panic. The warning said selective enforcement of rules created legal exposure and could void the HOA's directors' and officers' insurance. The board called an emergency meeting. They voted to adopt a new enforcement policy with mandatory documentation, random audits, and quarterly reports. They also voted to send a correction email retracting the smear Catherine had sent to the neighborhood email list, accusing me of harassing vendors and obstructing HOA operations. Angela called me the day the retraction went out. She said Catherine's bluff gets read out loud and the room reacts. She said 3 homeowners stood up at the meeting and shared their own stories of Catherine threatening them with tows, fines, and liens. She said the board looked horrified. I asked Angela what happened to Catherine. She said Catherine moved out 2 months later. She said the house went on the market with a disclosure about prior HOA disputes. She said it sold for $20,000 under asking. I still live in Kingsbridge Estates. The new parking policy is fair. The new management company responds to emails within 24 hours. The gatehouse cameras were upgraded to record overnight. I see the dog walker sometimes. He still films the neighborhood. He said he got 200,000 views on the video he posted of Catherine screaming at the tow truck driver. He said the comments section was full of people sharing their own HOA horror stories. I hope you have a great day.